point of view are you using in your memoir? So you might think you already know the answer to this question, right? It's like I'm writing in first person. It's the narrator's point of view. The problem I find is that a lot of people think they're actually writing from the narrator's point of view, but in reality, they're actually not. I'll explain what the problem is and how to fix it coming up. Okay, let me start out this video by talking about point of view. What does that mean exactly? Well, if you're talking about a movie or TV, it's where you place the camera. Literally, it means what the camera views from this angle. So I would call most movie and film point of view as third person. So it's a subjective view, recording everything that takes place without being part of the action. So if you have seen the series The Office, the idea is that there's a documentary film crew recording everything going on. And so they are not part of the action. They are observers. They are outsiders. And there's a separation between those who are recording the series and those who are in the series.
And Jim, now is the time to stop putting Dwight's personal effects into Jell-O.
Okay. Dwight, I'm sorry, because I've always been your biggest fan.
So I promise you I'm going to talk about Memoir in a second, but I want to stay with this analogy a little bit longer because I think helping you understand point of view in a very visual way will actually help your understanding of it when it comes to memoir. So sometimes there isn't the separation that you have in The Office where you have the people filming the show and the people in the show. Sometimes they are one and the same. Sometimes that line is crossed. So that is what I would call a first person point of view in a film, such as Hardcore Henry. So Hardcore Henry is shot from the main character's point of view. And I want you to notice how this is seen through the lens of the main character. Now think about how this would be different if the entire movie were filmed with a drone. You would have a very different perspective. So the point of view that you choose can have a huge impact on how you tell your story and how your reader perceives it. So I have seen a lot of writers write in first person, but it was as if they were using a third person perspective. And what do I mean by that? I mean, there's an objectivity there. There's a distancing effect. We're not really getting your true perspective on events. So why is perspective important? Well, in the same way that changing a camera angle will change what you see on the screen, shifting your perspective will also change the information that your reader receives. Basically, you need to tell us this from your point of view. And if you don't do it, it's going to feel a little bit insincere. So here's the question. Are you actually telling your memoir from your point of view? So my first tip for you is don't use first person to give us a third person account. So let me explain what I mean by that by giving you an example of the kind of writing I often see from my students. Our car raced down the street at breakneck speeds, whizzing past all of the other vehicles and almost running over a pedestrian. This pace continued as we maneuvered down the highway until we finally ran out of gas 20 miles later. So what is the problem with this? Well, this is the Office version of memoir. In other words, this is the third person perspective. There's a certain distance in the way that the story is being told. So look at this again. As you read this, where do you think the camera would be positioned? For me, this is a drone shot. This is the view of everything happening from above. So the problem is, if this is memoir, we need the narrator's point of view. So where does the camera need to be? It needs to be inside that car. The camera needs to show us what the narrator is witnessing. So do you remember the shots I showed you earlier from Hardcore Henry? Where did they place the camera? Well, they actually created a mask attached to a person's face to record what that character would actually see. So what is the memoir version of this? Let me give you the rewrite. How could I get Johan to slow down the car? He was driving way past the legal limit. Now he was putting both of our lives in danger. There were just inches separating us from the car in front of us. All that car had to do was slow down by 10 miles, and we'd plow into its back end. Johan swerved just in time. I wondered how long he planned to continue at this pace. I hope you feel the difference between these two samples. In the second one, we are not getting this generic distanced point of view. Rather, we're sitting in the passenger seat with the narrator, getting her point of view on everything that happens. place. So let me give you one more example of this so that you really grasp what I'm getting at. Here is the generic point of view, the drone shot. The man slammed his fists into my face. He pounded into me over and over again until he was too tired to keep inflicting pain. So what I just read to you, the camera could be positioned at any angle. It doesn't really matter. I'm always going to get this story. This is a generic version. How would I give the first person point of view, the narrator's subjective version of what is happening? I felt a searing pain in my eye. Suddenly I realized I'd been hit. I barely had time to register the next fist coming toward me. I instinctively covered my head with my arms, but he was stronger than I was. So do you feel the difference there? What I want you to get from this is to tell the story from your point of view. So let me give you an example from a published memoir. This is from The Wave. Ahead of us, a Jeep was moving, fast. Now it stopped. A safari Jeep with open back and sides and a brown canvas hood. The Jeep was waiting for us. We ran up to it and climbed aboard. Okay, so I'm gonna stop there. There's a little bit more, but I wanted to talk about what I just read to you thus far. So let's talk about what the generic version would be. What would the wrong version of this be? I'll give you an example. A fast-moving Jeep stopped and picked us up. That would be the generic version, but no, we see what the narrator sees as she sees it. We're getting this from the narrator's point of view. Let me finish the sample. I flung Vikram into the back and he landed face down on the green corrugated metal floor. Steve jumped in and picked him up. We were all inside now. Steve had Vic on his lap. I sat across from them with Mally on mine. Okay, so even the way she describes Steve is from her point of view. She doesn't say Steve was on the left of the Jeep, I was on the right. Instead, what does she say? I sat across from them. So I don't even know where Steve is in the Jeep, but it doesn't matter. From her perspective, he's across from her. That is writing from your point of view. So my next tip when it comes to creating writing from the narrator's point of view is this: don't be comprehensive. So what do I mean when I use the word comprehensive? What I mean is that you don't need to give me all of the details top to bottom, right to left. We don't need to know all of the detail. The easiest way to understand this is using an example, a description of place. So for instance, don't tell me everything about a place. Don't rack your memory and think of anything you can remember and jot that down on the page. Instead, what I want you to tell me is what stood out for you. What made this experience unique? Okay, so let me give you an example of what not to do. If you're describing a hospital room, what you don't want to do is give us the generic description of a hospital. So a beginning writer might describe the smells of antiseptic, an adjustable bed, an IV stand on the side of the bed, a heart monitor in the corner, white walls, a bathroom on the edge of the room. So that is generic hospital room. So how would I use the narrator's point of view to rewrite this? And also keeping in mind the tip not to be comprehensive. So this is how Lorraine Herring describes her hospital room in the memoir, A Constellation of Ghosts. Singing bowl chakra music plays on my iPad while the big cats frolic in silent non-HD quality. The computer station to my right flashes its constant screensaver about the dangers of MRSA. The man in the room next to mine moans. He will moan for 3 days before he's gone. I won't know whether he died or was moved to another location. So what has she done? She hasn't given me a generic hospital room. She's given me her version of the hospital room, which are these specific details that she remembers, the details that are important to her. So in Truth and Beauty, Anne Patchett describes an auction. In a long barn, there were cafeteria-style tables set out with boxes. One contained 7 dolls with plastic heads and matted hair, 4 chipped cups, a coil of rope, pulleys, and 2 spades. The next had a toaster and a thick stack of record albums, half a dozen extension cords, several packs of playing cards, countless forks. Every box was an inexplicable collection of items that had to be purchased as a unit. There was no picking out what you wanted. Okay, so what I want you to know is she doesn't spend any time describing the barn or the tables. We know what a barn looks like. We know what tables look like. Instead, what she focuses on is the one detail that makes this place unique. What stands out for her? And in doing so, she makes this a really interesting place. We realize how odd this place is, and she even inserts humor into this description. So use this tip in your own writing. Don't include all of the details. Just include the details that make a place unique, the details that stand out for you. So I'm going to give you a final example just so that you really get this concept that's so important to writing memoir. Let's say that you're describing a carnival. So your first instinct might be to describe the smell of cotton candy, all of the rides, those games where you throw darts at balloons, and if you win, you go home with a big teddy bear. That's carnival, right? But that's the generic version of a carnival. That's everyone's idea of a carnival, and I want your version. So what you need to do is think about this carnival and think about what stuck out for you. What was different about this carnival? What did you remember? So I don't know, maybe all of the employees had shaved heads and that was odd to you and you remembered that. Or maybe you loved going into the fun house because there were no fat mirrors in the fun house. They were all skinny mirrors and you looked fabulous in this fun house. That is your version of this carnival. It's not the generic version. So tip number 2, don't give us every detail when it comes to describing a place. Don't be comprehensive. Instead, just include the unique details that stand out to you. So I'm going to give you my third and final tip in just a second. Before I do, be sure to sign up for my free class on memoir structure by clicking on the link below this video. Also, be sure to click like and subscribe. Today, any likes or subscribes are worth 25 bonus karma points. So on to my last tip. Include your thoughts as well as visual details. So I've been using movies as an example thus far to give you a sense of how point of view works, both in movies and in memoir. And I want to use movies as an example one last time. So for the first 2 tips, I use camera to explain point of view. So the first thing was you want your camera to be strapped to your forehead. This is giving us the scene from your viewpoint, you don't want the drone shot. So the second thing is that you don't want to keep that camera running all of the time and recording every single detail. There's editing that needs to go on. Just tell the story using the details that stand out to you, the details that make this place or this event unique. My third tip actually takes away the camera entirely. And my third tip is the fact that a camera is not the only way to tell a story. You also have voiceover narration. And what does voiceover narration do for a movie? You use it to recount a character's thoughts. So this is one of the best uses of voiceover narration for me. This is from the 1973 film Badlands.
I grew to love the forest. The cooing of the doves and the hum of dragonflies in the air made it always seem lonesome and like everybody's dead and gone. When the leaves rustled overhead, it was like the spirits were whispering about all the little things that bothered them.
Here we get a really good sense of what is going on inside the narrator's head, and it has nothing to do with the camera, nothing to do with what we see. So what is the memoir version of this? So yes, in addition to showing us what the narrator sees, you also want to put us inside the narrator's head. So here is the generic description, the visual description, what I suggest you don't do in your memoir. It is a large drum circle in Venice Beach, filled with around 20 people in hippie attire. Most of the women are wearing tie-dye, while the men prefer to go shirtless. There are man buns and cornrows on display. The smell of weed fills the air. Everyone is holding a drum and looks ready for the ceremony to begin. I get that writing all of the time from my students, and they're very proud of it because it's so visual, and they've done such a good job including all of these descriptions. I come to class and I say, no, no, no. Why? Because it's generic writing. This again is the drone version of how you would describe Venice Beach. This is kind of what anyone would have noticed that day. So I'm going to give you the after version, which takes these 3 tips into account. What I want you to notice as you're reading this is how much of what I'm describing is actually going on inside my head. A lot of what I'm writing down on paper is actually thoughts. I'm sitting in a circle looking down at a drum. I'm pretty sure it's a djembe, but it could be a conga. I don't want to ask and arouse suspicion. What I'm wearing already makes me look suspicious. I worry that people will think I'm a narc. I thought that a light sundress would be perfect for the summer breeze of Venice Beach. But as I look around me, I realize that tie-dye is the attire of choice in this crowd. The man next to me has a long beard and a man bun. As he passes me a joint, I can't help but think of all the saliva that the wet end of the paper already contains. Right? So much of that is internal. It's what the narrator is thinking, not what she is seeing. So my final tip to you is that what goes on inside your head is usually actually much more interesting than what you're actually looking at. Put us inside your head throughout your memoir and you'll write an engrossing book. If you want to learn more about this concept and how to put your reader inside your head, I suggest you check out my other video, What is the Perfect Ratio of Subjective to Objective Writing? See you next time, guys. Happy writing. Take care.